If Bob comes by, would you tell him just to come by, drop the stuff off?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Bob Heineman from Call to Action. Assembled up here are some of the leaders of the organizations that are bringing Father Helmut tonight to us and that have made it possible for us to have a united Reform Renewal community in the Catholic Church. My wonderful colleague, Nicole Sotelo, who has been the Director of Programs and Communication for Call to Action for the previous 8 years. Laura Singer, past president of Women's Ordination Conference, and constant contribution to the Catholic Church and its forward motion in Chicago. I've asked Patsy, as we call her, to share a little bit about the legacy of Pat and Patty Crowley. Today was Patty's birthday. Patty would have been 100 years old today. So we honor her, we say, you are a saint already, and your husband too. And we would love to go through the process of getting you sainthood, but it's too much trouble. There's more justice to be done here. I hear Patty saying that.
Good evening. It's a very great honor to represent my family here, and it's such a sign of hope that all of you are here, that I know that we gather as people who love the church and want to see it as it is meant to be. So, as Bob said, my name is Patricia Crowley. I'm a Benedictine at St. Scholastica Monastery. I also am the eldest of the six children of Pat and Patty Crowley. And Bob asked me to tell you a little bit about them, so I hope that comes across that it's their legacy. Our family was extended by 20-some foster children and countless foreign students, so I have relatives all over the world. Currently, I work on retreats for women who are homeless. I've worked in homelessness all my life, and that is certainly a legacy of my mother's. She was one of the founding mothers of Deborah's Place, which is one of the programs for women who are homeless in the city of Chicago. So Pat and Patty Crowley. They each grew up, I was thinking about it today, in a rather traditional Catholic setting. And when my father went to Notre Dame, he met a priest by the name of Father Chikshidi, who enticed him into starting a group that was based on the Joseph's method of observe, judge, and act. And from then on, the rest is history. And my mother was also from a very traditional family. Her mother was a convert after she was, I think, 8 years old. And she went to Trinity College and took the class of Monsignor John A. Ryan when she was a sophomore at Trinity. And it was traditionally, she said, a class where the girls liked to take it because they could write letters to their boyfriends. But if you got Monsignor Ryan off the topic, he was wonderful. And so that was her mission in life, and she too was changed. My parents married in 1937, and by the late 1940s, they founded and were part of the Christian Family Movement, which became an international movement, and many of you were part of it, or at least know of it. My father died in 1974, and after he died, my mother began anew, which is, of course, the spirit of the Paschal Mystery over and over again, to begin anew. And she was involved in many things in the civic community. I mentioned Deborah's Place, And she was involved in the first call to action in Detroit that was called by Cardinal Dearden. And she always believed that call to action was the hope of our church. The other thing that you may know is that in the 1960s, my parents were invited to participate in the Birth Control Commission, and they were very surprised by that because they had never been invited to do anything like that before. They were one of three couples. They were the only, they always said ordinary couple, because the other two couples were professional doctors or scientists, I'm not sure. And their contribution was to do a survey of couples around the world. It was done actually by Notre Dame University. And that information, of course, changed the minds and fed into the conversation about birth control at that commission. Bob McClory's book tells this in great detail. It's called Turning Point. I think there are a couple copies on Amazon.com, but it's out of print. But my mother insisted that that story get written, and my mother was very persistent on what she wanted, and she got it. And they put their whole heart and soul into that. So when they went home from the Vatican after the Birth Control Commission was finished, thinking that 90% of the commission had agreed to the fact that birth control was not intrinsically evil. And then they were awakened in the middle of the night, one night in 1968, by a reporter from Pari Mach and asking for an opinion about the new encyclical Humanae Vitae. And they were devastated. My father was diagnosed with cancer within a year and a half, and my mother never spoke publicly about it for 25 years, never spoke about the experience on Humanae Vitae. She began to speak when the priests in Chicago invited her to talk on the 25th anniversary of that document. So today, on the 100th anniversary of her birth, I received an email with a poem that was entitled, and from somebody I don't know, it was entitled St. Patty. So I think that the church acclaims their legacy, and I bear witness to that. So on behalf of my family, I thank you all for being here, and on behalf of my parents.
Thank you, Sister Patricia, and thank all of you, the leadership of the Church Reform Renewal organizations. Thank you. Well, you got me now. This is my opportunity to fill your hearts before you hear Father Helmut. But I know you're anxious to hear him, so I'll make it brief. This is a call to action. We, our organization, 37 years of it, is called a call to action because we believe that there is a better church, a church of justice, a church of accountability, and a church of inclusion. That is the church that we proclaim as the successor, the legitimate product of Vatican II. And I look out and I can only see about the first 5 rows, but I see plenty of people who have been in this struggle longer than I have. And that's saying much. 18 years ago, I came to work for Call to Action, but I'd been involved in the early 80s as a board member. Dan Daly, who's in our audience tonight, was clever enough to see that I had a lot of energy and I could take time away from my work. So, like many of you, I became a very involved volunteer. Call to Action today is across the country. It is 2,500 people who gather yearly for a conference in Milwaukee this year, in Memphis the following year. And we are an organization that day by day calls you to action. calls you to act on behalf of our church and on behalf of our country and our world. Tonight, we are so privileged, so pleased to have Helmut Schuler with us, really the instigator, probably an accusation we'll live with, an instigator of the priest movement in the world. Starting in Austria, they did the Pastor Initiative, and that's what is printed in your book, in your program book in the center portion, even though it's very, very small. But I urge you to take out your magnifying glasses when you get home and study it, because, heck, I subscribe to it all the way. Helmut, please join us.
It's a great honor for me to speak here for you, because I know that a lot of you have been engaged in church reform since decades. Some of you may be also out of the time before the Second Vatican Council, because that very, very important council was really prepared also at the base of the church. A lot of movements, very often secretly, tried to get changes in this church on different issues, on different levels. Let us remember the liturgy movement, which started in my country, for example, after the First World War. Communities started to celebrate Mass, to have Eucharist in their mother tongue, or the ecumenical movement, or all the other movements. So I know also in this room there are sitting a lot of you, real fighters for this change in our church, in the spirit now of the Second Vatican Council. Thank you very much for welcoming me so nicely. I will speak to you a little bit about our Parish Priests Initiative in Austria, and then we'll go to the key issues, I think, of church reform today, and then give place, if it's possible, to questions and answers, so that we have a conversation which should be typical also for our new church. We started with the Parish Priest Initiative out of a deep sorrow. The sorrow was, what will be with our parish communities after we will have finished our service for retirement or for illness or so. And a lot of us in Austria, us pastors, were informed that we will not have any successors. That means for us to leave these communities behind us and alone in an uncertain future. One concrete future could be to be part of a so-called parish cluster, a mega structure where one or two or three, at the end, I think one priest will travel around to celebrate Mass here and there, and to greet the people from the car and say goodbye very quickly without any contact or such things. So we thought we should speak up about this sorrow, and we should ask our bishops to do something, to feel themselves as shepherds of their dioceses, to feel themselves accountable to the people of God, to the people of church. And so we founded this Priest Initiative 2006 and gathered 12 or 15 priests at the beginning. But very soon, as we started to speak out about all our sorrows in the future of our parish communities and all the other church reform issues, there came more and more priests to us and joined us. We tried to come in contact with our bishops. With some of them we had some dialogue, very polite, very cultivated dialogues, but without any concrete result. They were telling us that the responsibility is in Rome, and therefore they cannot do anything for the changes we are asking for, and so these dialogues finished without any sign of hope. And then the Pope, Benedict XVI, came to Austria, 2007. And we asked to get the possibility to speak with him. Then we were told there's no possibility because the Pope is coming as a pilgrim, and pilgrims don't discuss. So we wrote him a letter. For priests, not so easy to bring down all the things in a short letter, because we are speaking very much and we are writing very much. But we urged ourselves to do it and to have a letter with 1 page to the Pope, to bring to him all our sorrows, all our questions. And after 7 months, our Archbishop in Vienna got the answer, not we directly, because we must not exist officially. Therefore, it was a question of protocol. So, the Archbishop was told to tell us that all these things are very nice, but totally unnecessary, because there are no questions. There are the answers for now and forever. And so, we knew that was the next station of our experience. And then I was invited to the Papal Nuncio in Vienna for lunch. A very fine Italian lunch. And at the end of this lunch, he asked me 2 strange questions. The first question was, Father Schüller, could you tell me what could be the problems of the Romans with a celibacy out of choice? I was very astonished about this question of a nuncio. And he registered that I was astonished, and he said, you must know I am a Maronite priest. It means he was born in Lebanon. He was member of the Maronite church, part of our church. And this part of our church, like other parts of our church, have officially the married and the unmarried priests. And the final statement of the nuncio was, for this question, we have married and unmarried priests, and we haven't any problems. So I told him, please tell this also the Pope. You are chief, because you are the nuncio, you are quite direct, you have a direct approach to him, and so we laughed a little bit about it. And then he said to me, he asked me, why don't you go to Rome to tell them what are your sorrows? So I phoned my friends of the priest initiatives, should we go there? They said, yes, we should go there. So we took the Annuario Pontificio, that's the register of all the offices in Rome, with all the addresses and email addresses and phone numbers, and we wrote a lot of letters to these offices. We want to come to Rome and to speak with you. The only answer we received was that of the CDF, Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. Yes, we should come, special day, they will be glad to meet us. It was, yes, Luis Ladaria, the Archbishop Luis Ladaria, Spanish Jesuit, who was the vice chief of the congregation under your well-known William Levada. He is the prefect. He was the prefect of it. So we started to Rome. When we arrived in Rome, I got a phone call of the CDF. The dialogue has to be cancelled because of problems of time. So I phoned my Archbishop. What should we do now? And he told me, Schönborn, let me a little time, I will clear up the things. And then he phoned me and informed me, firstly. At the same morning, we were arriving in Rome. The offices of the Vatican were forbidden to speak with us, all offices. But the issue came before the Pope, and the Pope decided one should speak with us, but only one office, the CDF, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. So we were back at field 1, as you can say. And then we had this very interesting discussion. Almost 2 hours we were there, and we presented all our pastoral experiences we could find and shared them with Archbishop Ladaria. And Ladaria listened very carefully to us, and at the end I asked him, is there anything which is against the faith or against the cornerstones of our faith? And he said, no, I don't think. Very important questions, but you should discuss them with your bishops in Austria. So, and then 2011 we had an assembly and we discussed what to do now, and then we decided to publish our shocking, very provoking, terrifying appeal to disobedience. That was a step we decided for out of our conscience as pastors. And we thought we should address the system of the church, the actual system of the church. It is an absolutistic monarchy without any fundamental rights for nobody. It means, I will speak to it a little bit later, but that was the first reason. Giving obedience to a system without control of those in power, giving obedience to those who are not accountable for the using of this obedience. And our suspicion was also very important that our obedience is going to be misused for keeping down the legitimate desires and expectations for church reform of the people of the church. We, the clerics, belonging to the hierarchy system, should keep down in our parishes these desires. That was the first reason for saying call to disobedience. The second was that there are no fundamental rights, no control for those who are in power in this church, and an obedience which is asked by such without any power control is an only functioning obedience, is also a very dangerous thing. We in Germany and Austria know exactly what's at stake. Franz Jägerstätter, a very brave Catholic in Austria who resisted the system of Nazi Germany, was left alone by his church in this decision, because they told him it's not possible to resist. And therefore we thought it would be necessary to make transparent in which system we are now living in our church. And the third reason was that we are practically daily practicing disobedience in our pastoral work. When, for example, when we are inviting divorced, remarried people and invite them to share with us the Holy Communion. When we are inviting the laic people to take part in the decision-making of our parishes and of our church. When we are reaching out for our sisters and brothers in the other Christian churches to to come and to have with us the holy meal of our Lord, and so on and so on. The problem is that we are a double level system. On the first level of our daily practice, we are doing such things. On the second level, the official one, there is silence about it. And that is really unhealthy for the church. And therefore, this was also a very important reason to say, hello guys, come out of the background, priests, and make transparent what you are doing in your pastoral work for the people. And don't hide yourself in your parish communities only and say, I hope nothing is knowing it, because the bishops know very exactly what we are doing. But they are very satisfied with it because when we are practicing silent disobedience, nobody was shouting against us, because it's for them very comfortable, because maybe there will be no need for church reform, because in silence it is happening, and so we must nothing do in the church as a whole. And so they got not nervous when we started to practice disobedience in our pastoral work. They got nervous when we spoke about it. So therefore but we can discuss it. Some of you will be unsatisfied also after this remarks of me. We can discuss it. Yes. And then the things went on very rapidly because the nervousness was very, very heavy. We were the bishops were very angry, and in the first hour in Austria they spoke about excommunication of us, or that we have to leave our ministry, and so on and so on. But very soon they relaxed a little bit, or they had to relax, or they had to climb down from their first shock, because they realized that almost 80% of the Austrian Catholics are strongly supporting our program. And also almost 75 or 18% of the priests, as we know from opinion surveys done by independent agencies. Yes. And then started all this international connection, all this finding contacts with priests in other countries, all this. We were very surprised how much contacts we got, how much priests addressed us per email from different countries and continents of the world. Hello, we want to say you that your questions are also our questions. What can we do? What can we do together? And so on and so on. So, and therefore I'm standing here also because it's a result of this connecting internationally. What is the deep sorrow behind our work? And now I want to invite you to dive in the spirit of the Second Vatican Council. Because the Second Vatican Council rediscovered the people of God and put it in the center of its most important document, speaking about herself, the Church. Lumen Gentium. The Church is speaking about itself. And in this Lumen Gentium, the people of God is at the beginning of this document, and only afterwards the ministry for this people of God, means the hierarchy. So we can say the people of God, the people of the Church, was rediscovered at this council. But the people of God is communio. That was the second word in this council. Gemeinschaft, communio. Coming out of the communion with Jesus, coming out of the Eucharist, around which the community is built up. seeing one another as sisters and brothers, sharing the bread of Jesus, and reaching out for the people we are living with in this time. That was the vision, that is the vision of the Second Vatican Council. And this vision trickled down to the base of the church, also to people and touched people who are no experts for the Second Vatican Council or its documents. But they are feeling, they have the same feeling like Pope John the 23rd. The very simple and clear feeling this church has to return to the respect for the people of God, has to return to its mission, has to return to the respect for its dignity, and to its return to its vision to be an inclusive community which is inviting the people to come and to share this community, which is centered on Jesus our Lord, who is for himself standing in the hand of the Father and who is with us with his Spirit. And this community, this communio, is taking place in these basic communities at the base of the church and also of our society. And our parish communities who try to become such communities around Jesus, who try to become it. It's very hard, it's not easy to become it, but they try to become such communities, are now in danger because of the lack of leaders for these communities, lack of pastors. And now the bishops begin to merge these parish communities to new mega clusters for pastoral, or something they think is pastoral. And this is the beginning of our sorrow concerning the future of these communities. The vision is mega clusters of parishes where some priests at the end, maybe only one, the last one, will travel around, have Mass and sacraments with the people, climb back into the car, traveling to the next community, and doing the same for 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, in Austria in some kind, 20 villages. A lot of priests are deeply depressed about this development. Not only concerning the workload, but concerning the feeling that they cannot do their ministry as they want it to do, as they want it to do as good pastors who live in companionship with the people of their parishes, who know them, who are related to them, who are sharing their daily sorrows, who are trying to share with them the sorrows of all the people who are in a miserable situation. And therefore we thought to have to speak out that cannot be the future way of the church. And therefore we are asking for the opening of the priesthood to married men and women. To open the priesthood for the tremendous gifts that are given these married men and these women for this ministry. For the women, one remark to the opening for the women. We think not only out of the experience of lack of priests, but also out of the question, is it not a very, very central message of our faith out of the Bible, that man and woman are together image of God in this world? And if they are together image of God, must this not be presented in the structures of our ministry, which is delivering this message to the people? When I was responsible for Caritas Austria, before having been Vicar General in the Archdiocese of Vienna, I had the chance to travel a little bit around and to look at the situation of the world and to see that not only in the church, but also in the world, the daily life is managed to the greatest part by the women. And as I have read in your statistics, that 80% of the pastoral services in the parish communities are done by laic people, and 80% of these 80% are done by the women. So it's also a question of the reality of church, this opening of the priesthood and of the ministry of leading the communities in new ways, possibly, yes. That's one thing. Communio, people of God. But the question, people of God, has also another dimension. What are the rights of these people? Looking at this table. What are the rights of these people? Pope Paul VI started in the late 60s in a direct consequence out of the Second Vatican Council, a really interesting project and very necessary project, the so-called Lex II, the project Lex Ecclesiae Fundamentalis in Latin. That means a fundamental right for the church. Or you can say also a kind of constitution for this church, where with fundamental rights for the members of this church, for the baptized, with control of power, with accountability of those who are in power, for the people of the church, with fundamental rights, with structures, with synodal structures for decision making in this church, with clear ways for getting your desires and your expectations, your wishes, getting discussed and decided. It is interesting that the Pope started this project, not some church reform movement at the margin of the church. The Pope himself. And it should have become the preamble for the new codex. This means the new books with the regular books with the regulations of the church, the Codex Juris Canonici. But the project was buried first class at the beginning of the 80s by John Paul II. And I think because the Vatican system has realized that such a constitution for the church would be the end of a lot of things we are now having in our systems. The end of this absolutistic monarchy. And therefore, I think when we are speaking about the people of God, and when we are waiting that this people of God is and the people of the church is listened to, and is listened with all its desires and wishes, we should ask also for such constitution for our church. We should ask for the continuation of this project, because without such a constitution, all our desires and expectations in the reform of church are like letters to Santa Claus. It means letters to the monarch, please be so kind and let that and let that and give us that and give us that. against the dignity of the people of God. I think. The dignity, it is against the dignity of the faithful, of the baptized. And so I ask you one thing. When you speak sometimes of laic people, then speak sometimes also of church citizens. And you know what I mean. Use sometimes also this term, because church citizen means that we have to behave like citizens and we have to be treated like citizens. And we have a need for something like citizen rights in our church. It is a respect for the dignity of the faithful. That's not an imitation of the bad secular democracy. It's a question of respect for the dignity of the baptized. Each of them is child of God Father, brother and sister of Jesus Christ. And as the letter to the Ephesians says somewhere, you are co-citizens of the saints and house companions of God. You can read it there. And that is a very fine expression of this dignity of the baptized. Therefore, my asking, please use sometimes also church citizens instead of laic people. Because laic people, we know this word is coming from the Greek language, belonging to the laos, to the people, but in reality, laic people sounds like no competence, no knowledge, no capability, no rights. The Second Vatican Council has a second very important document called Gaudium et Spes. This document is the thinking that is the thinking that of the Church about its pastoral work in our time. And it's beginning with these touching words, maybe you remember, the anger and the joy, the sadness and the hope of the people of our time are the anger and the joy, the sadness of the hope of the disciples of Jesus Christ of the Church. It means the Second Vatican Council wanted the Church to start its way into the modern society, into the society of our time. The view on this modern time, on modern society, the view of John the 23rd and of this council was a quite optimistic one. They knew that this modern society has a lot of dark sides, of conflicts, of questions, all that. But that it is a society which is also advancing in a very interesting direction towards a mankind in which every human being, out of his birth as a human being, has the same rights and the same dignity and the same access to the wealth of the world and the same access to the chances to develop its own lives. That is a civilization that is on the right way. Also, there are a lot of very, very heavy problems. But this optimistic view on this modern society gave to the Second Vatican Council the possibility to decide the Church should go into this society without being afraid. Don't be afraid. Now we are in a situation where our church leaders are telling us that we have to be cautious with this modern society, not to touch it too more, and to be some kind of contrast society. against it, culture of death and such things. And that's also the reason why the church leaders are afraid of you, the laïc people, because you are part of this modern society. And you are bringing in things that could be dangerous for this church. Therefore, they want to keep you out with your gifts and with your thinking, and only the members of the hierarchy should decide what is good and what is bad in this society. So I think we should see that this Second Vatican Council is encouraging the church to go into this society as it is, to the men and women of this time as they are, and to rediscover their dignity, to rediscover their gifts, to offer them companionship, not only compassion sometimes, companionship, to go with them, to be with them in the difficult situations of life, to be with them when there is need of advocacy for those who are without rights, for those who are kept in poorness and in lack of rights and fundamental rights. And therefore we need, that's also one of our questions and askings, we need a new language for our praying, official praying and official teaching of our faith. A language which is understood by the men and women of our time. And I have heard a lot of your discussions about the new missile here in the United States, and that's one of a concrete question to this subject, to this issue. A new language for our faith is not afraid to take risks, to find new words, and not to keep the text as narrow as possible at the Latin original version. Not to be afraid of this society and of this time means also to think over our moral teaching. I think society has changed, and Pope John the 23rd said sometime that it is not, the church is the mankind is learning, church is teaching the mankind, but sometimes the mankind is also teaching the church. And therefore I think we should start to come in a new dialogue with the situations of modern life concerning, for example, the questions of the relationships, the partnerships. We should concentrate again, as it was in the Gospel of Jesus, we should concentrate again on the quality of relations and not of the external form of them. In our practical pastoral work, we are doing that already. We take in account what is really happening in the life of the people. We try to come clear what is their guilt, what is development, how can they find a new start when somewhat is broken down, like their relationships. We should be companions in life. So, you know, all these issues are very well known by you, as I know. So I wanted only to remember them because I think this is the remembering of the spirit of these church reform movements. We as priests try to do our best to support the people of the church in its desires for church reform. We will become more and more courageous to be at your side, and to decide for advocacy at the side of for the legitimate desires of and expectations of the people of God. Therefore, we try to build up connections. Therefore, we try to stand together, and therefore we try to bring courage and hope to one another. And so far, you have listened to me such a long time. So I will finish now my comments on that issue, and will open the space for questions and answers, for the exchange of hopes and experiences, and let's give one another hope and courage for the long march to the change of our church. Thank you very much.